That's right, y'all. It's Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. And in case you're wondering why this version is extra blurry, it's because this is the PS2 version, which is half of the Street Fighter Anniversary Collection that was released on PS2. The other half is Hyper Street Fighter 2, which we're not looking at in this video. I just showed that in the previous video, in case you're curious. So this PS2 version is pretty interesting. As far as I know, it's the last Third Strike version that Capcom themselves worked on. Later versions, like on PS3 and PS4, they farmed out to Western development teams. The PS3 version is based on this version, at least according to what I've read. The PS4 version, as far as I've read, is basically just licensed MAME emulator with a fancy custom front end. But this version Capcom made themselves. It's based on the Dreamcast version, which it is like in most respects, with a few tweaks and additions, a few of which I can point out. There is a lot to talk about, at least for me, with this game, which kind of fascinates me. I mean, I've been fascinated with it since I got it on Dreamcast way back in the day. There are not one but 3 option menus in the game. The first one, well, the one is system direction, one is option, and then under option, the third one is extra option. I think you unlock extra option by beating the game in arcade mode. Maybe you have to beat it with all the characters to unlock extra option, I forget. But anyway, you have to unlock extra option somehow. You can find that on GameFAQs. Let's go into extra option. That's probably the quickest one to look through. Actually, I may be wrong. So you can change a bunch of stuff, like with the UI, which is cool. You can turn the UI off. Now, this is the only setting I have changed from the default. That's why it's in red. And this setting, I think, is not in the Dreamcast version, at least not in the Japanese Dreamcast version I have, which I got after this, and I was very disappointed to find that setting was not in there, because, like, if you're going through the game trying to beat it with all characters, just unlock extra costume colors and stuff, those bonus stages get to be a real drag. So it's very nice to be able to turn those off. I really appreciate that setting. Although, wait, if you can't get to the option menu until... Well, if you can't get to extra option until you beat the game with every character, then that would be not so helpful for that purpose specifically. But anyway, it's nice to have if you ever do want to go back and play arcade mode and are sick of those little... Because the bonus games, which order do they go in? Is it the first one is smashing the car, and the second one is parrying? Or maybe it's the other way around. Parrying Sean's basketballs. I don't care for doing those over and over. The options here. So yeah, you can change all kinds of stuff about the super meter, stun gauge, shoot, next timer. So you can turn off basically the entire UI. Which is pretty cool, just to play the game just with the fighters on the screen, basically. I kind of enjoy that myself. I think it freaks out viewers on YouTube. If you look through my Dreamcast videos of the Dreamcast version of Third Strike, I think the very last one, I just turned the whole UI off. So that's pretty fun. Now... I haven't messed with all of these. Some of them would obviously make things pretty weird. Auto parrying, jeez. We've circled back around here, looped it. Alright, so that's enough of that. Let's see. Let's check out regular game option. Set difficulty. I guess I'm going to set this to at least 6. Oh, I have that set low just to make matches last a little longer. Should I leave it on that? Well, let's take a look at what the defaults are. Default difficulty is 3. This 1 isn't so different than 2. You can, was it the special options menu settings we were just looking at? You can make rounds last really, really long by reducing the damage, because there's damage level and then there's, well, there's these. These really affect it more. And it's kind of backwards from what you would think, I think. It took me a little experimentation to find a non-crazy setting, but you can have rounds last really long if you really want to, with just like a ton of health, or basically hits just do a tiny fraction of the health meter. But I don't think I want to do that anymore. Makes for sort of really long matches make for sort of boring watching. So I think one star down on damage levels is sufficient. I forget what this is about. I'll stick with the default. This I don't want because I'm using an arcade stick anyway. I guess it wouldn't make a difference, but whatever. Handicap. No. Oh wait, I do want this on because handicap screen is the screen where you pick stage as well. If you don't have this on, it'll just put you on a random stage, which can be fine, but there are stages. Actually, I was just thinking about this earlier today. Well, for one thing, there are stages that have flashing effects I don't like, but then also a lot of the stages in Third Strike, while maybe sort of pretty, because they're sort of, painted look, a lot of them are just pretty dull. Most of them aren't very animated, and a lot of them are just kind of blah. And then the other big change for me is setting player 2 to CPU, so I can actually play versus CPU in the versus mode, which is cool. And you may be wondering why I'm playing this, because since I have the PS3 version, which is, it's in higher resolution, and it's got better, less input delay. The input delay or input lag in the PS3 version is 2 frames, 2/60ths of a second between hitting a button and having the character start to animate the buttons, input a light punch or whatever button you hit, versus 4 frames in this game. This is on my particular setup with the crude testing method. So I measure 2 frames on the PS3 version. I measure 4 frames in this version. And that's still, for a fighting game, 4 frames is still pretty good. The PS4 version, I measure 3 frames, so right in between those two. And the Dreamcast version is actually like 5 or 6 frames, so that's why we're not in the Dreamcast version. I'm not in the PS3 version because the PS3 version does not have a versus mode. You can really, if you're playing single player, you only have arcade mode to play. You can play training mode, I guess, but you really only have arcade mode to play. And there's something about arcade mode in Third Strike that I just can't, I'll play through once and then I don't want to, that's kind of like, I don't really need to play through again. So I find I'm much more interested in something like a versus mode where you can just keep playing. So that's why I'm trying to find the sweet spot for me for Third Strike, because I would like to get into the game, but I was trying to get into the with the PS3 version. In fact, that was why I bought a PS3. I had sold my PS3, I got another one so I could get the Third Strike on PS3 because that has the least input lag, and I thought, oh, this is going to be my Third Strike machine. This is going to be sweet, but man, the arcade mode, I just can't keep coming back to it. I'm not motivated to. So I had more fun playing. Before that, I was playing the versus mode on Dreamcast, and even though it does have a fair deal more input lag, and the resolution, the aspect ratio is off. Actually, if you're playing on, is it with VGA or in the 240p mode, is weird, and I couldn't get the VGA signal. My VGA adapters, I couldn't find a VGA adapter that didn't have some kind of weird color. Just it would sort of change to greenish or reddish once in a while. I tried a bunch of different VGA adapters. Anyway, that was all pretty frustrating. So this PS2 version, even though it's a lot blurrier, I don't have color problems, and it's got less input lag, and it's got a few more options. So, whatever. That's why we're here. So I guess we're good here for now. Difficulty setting is a tricky one in this game because it's really character-based for me. But we'll see. I probably have to... Oh no, I already set this up. Did I? Dodge, kick. Okay. Now this is one to take note. This is at 94%. That's not the default setting. The default setting is 100%. You can see what it does. The thing is that this default setting of 100% is wrong, as far as I can tell. If you actually take a screenshot and measure this, it's a 5:4 aspect ratio. And as you have probably heard, the old CRT displays generally had a 4:3 aspect ratio, not 5:4. 5:4 is a little too wide. Do I have that right? No, I don't have that right. Well, whatever it was, this default setting of 100% X range, as they call it, or width, is too wide. It stretches the characters out a little bit. They're a little bit fat. If you actually measure, it's not a 4:3 ratio. So it just so happens, and I think this must be this way on purpose. If you set it to the lowest setting, which is 94, it's sort of a strange range they give you. At 94%, it actually is, if you then go and measure pixel by pixel, it is a correct 4:3 aspect ratio, and that matches the same aspect ratio you will see in more modern conversions like the PS3 version and the PS4 version. So if you have this game on PS2, don't leave it at this setting. This is incorrect. This is the default setting, but it is wrong. Just set it to the lowest setting, which is 94, and your characters will be the slender fighting trim they are meant to be in. The other big setting here is filter. You can see it smooths everything out. I usually run games with as few filters as possible. That's the first thing I would do, would be to turn off filters. But you can see how ragged this pixelization is. And maybe we'll do a quick round of something with the filter off just to show you, because it really is bizarre looking. It's just super, super ragged pixels. I guess it's just the scaling method they used. But it's really distracting looking, and so the filter is actually very strong, and it's strong with good reason, because the filtering without it is just ugh. But I'll let you guys see that for yourselves, so we'll leave that off for now. Sound, I have this set down just so I don't have to adjust the sound setting on my capture device. Now this is interesting. So original is what you use, the arcade settings. for the music. It's the same tracks you would get in the arcade mode. But then there is arranged, and this is the Dreamcast version. I forget if you can pick original or arranged on the Dreamcast version. I think you probably can. No, I forget. But anyway, in the Dreamcast version, you've still got the first 2 mixes of each stage. But then when you get to round 3 in the Dreamcast version, it kicks in a new mix. They made a new mix of each stage music that kicks in when you get to the 3rd, or is it random? I'm not sure if it kicks in every time you get to the 3rd round, but at any rate, sometimes when you get to the 3rd round, it kicks in a remix of the, and actually the one I love most is Dudley. So Dudley's normally sounds like, and I can't remember if it does this in like round 1 and then mix 2 in round 2, or if it's just random which one it picks, or if it alternates in mid-rounds, I don't know. So these are just the normal ones you would hear in the arcade version or whatever. But then in the Dreamcast and in this version, if you have it set on arranged, when you get to round 3 or something, it might kick in. Oh, you can't hear it. I couldn't hear it very well there, but he says something like, "This is a super dope mix." It's really quiet here in the menu. It's less quiet in the game itself. The stupid dope mix. So I like that because it actually tells you this is the remix version when you're playing. It's very apparent. So that's fun. So I'm going to leave that on because I like those. They did a good job with those additional mixes that come in the 3rd round. I have this on auto save, which I will probably switch off after I got everything settled. We've already looked at extra options, so it'll probably auto save now. So I'm going to go back into training mode to show you just what the filter off looks like. That's what we're using now. Filter is off. Little Ryu. Nasty old Ken. I guess we can show you what the options here are as well. Recording mode, that's the advanced stuff that I don't really know about, so I'm going to skip that. Dummy setting, you can set the computer to play you, so you can just play, you can't actually set it so you can knock each other out. So you're just kind of fighting each other, which is fun. Blah, blah. I don't know about this stuff. Change the super meter if you want to test super stuff. Attack data, blah. Change the button config. And actually, if you change the button config here, it changes it in the options, but it doesn't save it. It doesn't auto-save it here. So you would have to, you could change it here, and then if you went into your options and looked at it in the main options, you would see it's changed there, but it wouldn't actually save until you backed out of the regular options in an autosave. But then maybe would it even detect that as a change in autosave, or would it just not autosave? That would be a bug if it didn't. I haven't checked that. Anyway, who cares? So this is filter off, and as you can see, pretty pixelated. In fact, I want you to stop punching me because I want to stare at these pixels. Here's what I want to stare. Engage. So, quite pixelated, weird, really weird jaggies going on. It doesn't look, because the arcade game itself, these CPS games, this is a CPS3 game, but they all ran in regular CRT pixel aspect ratio. So the pixels in these were skinny, not square or not near square like most displays. So it's tough to convert it to like this PS2 game is running in 480i. So they have to do some rescaling, and it came out pretty crazy. I guess it's not quite as bad as I remember it, but it's still not my favorite thing to look at. Let's try rolling some effects here, see if that makes a difference. So yeah, it just gets really, I mean, it starts to look like bad JPEG compression or something as you're playing, because there's just these weird, irregular rectangular shapes along the edges of the sprites, and I find it distracting. What am I trying to do? That's what I was trying to do. Of course, the game itself is normally pixelated when it zooms in for that super effect on Ken's super there. I picked the wrong super for Ken. Who cares? So anyway, that's filter off. That's why I don't play with filter off. So we'll go ahead and turn that back on. Oops. Right there. Blurry. I kind of, like, usually I don't like blur filters, but I mean, this one to me is a better option than the super janky rescaled pixels, but also there's something about this particular setup of graphic filters and scaling and everything that comes together that makes this game look like, you know, a cel-shaded cartoon in a kind of cool way. You know, that sounds like a cop-out to say that, an excuse as to why I'm using it, but it does give it a look that I don't find as repulsive as I would have thought. It's got a sort of neat aesthetic to it, in a way. Anyhow, it also, like, I realized, it helped me realize that blur filters do reduce the flickering effect that you get with interlaced games, and so many PS2 games were interlaced, running in 480i instead of 480p or 480 progressive. Interlaced means it would display every other line, so it would display only 240 lines every other line on the TV every frame. So one frame it would do, say, the first line, and the third line would draw the first line, the third line, and the fifth line, and then the next frame would draw the second line, and the fourth line. And in that way, it only had to render, you know, half of the screen each frame, which for games was a way of saving on performance, because it's basically you're only effectively running in half the resolution and so forth. I don't know why old TVs, I guess there were old TVs that couldn't do progressive, probably, and could only do interlace, but I don't know, that's getting out of what I know, so I'm gonna shut up now. Change the subject anyway. So there's one more option menu. Saving my filter setting, thank you. And that is system direction, which is a big one. And it's complicated. You have to save it, and I think you have to load it separately. So let's load mine and see what I have. And then you have to remember, see, you can load it, and then you might exit and say, okay, I loaded my system settings, but no, you did, but they won't actually go into effect until you toggle this over to original, which sounds weird, but it means it's not the normal default direction anymore, it's your original settings, so that's a little strange and confusing, but anyway, that's how that works. So then you have to hit this to actually see what these settings are. Now, last time when I was playing, especially the Dreamcast version, I changed... Actually, most of the stuff was probably in the special options menu that I changed. But anyway, you can change a lot of rules of the game. So, like, I got tired of parrying the flashing effect when parries occur, so I just turned parries off. Like that. So, no more parries. Oh, and then this. But we're going to leave parries on for now. You can turn guarding off. That would be pretty crazy. I have not tried that. All kinds of details about how guarding actually works. Guard damage. Can you be knocked out while... See, this is interesting. This would be an effect like Street Fighter V has. If you turn this off, it would mean you can't KO someone with tick damage, which is how Street Fighter V, for instance, works. And people kind of seem to like that. Except for... Well, in Street Fighter V, you can take tick damage from a super, I believe, and be KO'd, even if you're guarding, so that would not quite be the same here. Turn off dashing, turn off jumping. That would be... Yikes. That would be some strict footsies action, I guess. Turn off quick stands, whoop. Come on, there's way more stuff. Also, I think the last 3 pages of this you have to unlock. I think again by beating arcade modes, but you unlock them somehow. I forget how. You can turn on and off throws. While holding the direction pad up or down. I don't know why you would want to can't perform a grapple defense. You see, some of this is so specific, and I don't know why. I'm sure pros know why that would even be an option anybody would want to mess with. Change the command leap attack to down button. Well, what is a leap attack? I don't know. Personal action is the taunts. This is kind of an interesting one. And I don't think, because personal actions, the taunts in Street Fighter 3 Third Strike confer some kind of buff. So like when Q does a taunt, he increases his damage defense or whatever. He takes less damage from attacks each time he taunts, up to 3 times. So he could KO his opponent and then taunt, and he would get that damage reduction, but it wouldn't matter because they all reset every round. So I think this is really just an aesthetic thing. Do you want the look of characters taunting? Maybe some people find it insulting, I don't know. But I don't think that would really affect gameplay. Oh, okay, I had supers turned off because they had flashy effects that I didn't like, but I think we can stand them for now. In the Dreamcast version, I eventually turned the X moves off because, of course, those are flashing yellow. In the X move is when you do, say, like a fireball. A fireball would be what's called a super move, but if you did the fireball motion and instead of hitting just one punch button, say with Ryu, you hit 2 punch buttons, and you had enough energy meter, it would do the EX version of that, which would do a more powerful fireball that can causes 2 hits and does more damage, but it has this yellow flashing effect that I didn't like, so I turned those off. But anyway, we'll leave all that stuff on. The target combo is a standard quote-unquote bread and butter combo that each character has. I don't really know. Each character's is different. I don't know combos, so I don't know what they are. At least I think that's what a target combo is. This is canceling a move into a super. Maybe that's what this is, canceling a... See, it's some games call like a fireball would be called a special move. Here, I guess they call a fireball a super move, and they call what most games would call a super move, they call that a super art. So that trips me up a bit. So this is all pretty advanced stuff. This is way advanced. I don't know what the difference between second and third would be. Turn off guards. Guard damage. Attention to guard damage when it is blocked. That would be weird. Set the power gauge to start at max. This one I did kind of like when I was trying to get less flashing effects, because otherwise the gauge would just build up, and I had turned off the X move, so there was really no way to spend power gauge, so I just would end up with both characters having this full flashing meter, and I didn't want that. I wanted as little flashing as possible, so I turned this on. But I think that's because you can't actually turn the super meter itself off individually or just by itself in the extra options menu, which is weird considering all the various options that are there. So these last 8-9 pages. So this is a page you have to unlock. These options here. This one you have to unlock as well. Dash from all those. Cancel. And this is the last one you would unlock. Each character can pick from 3 different super arts. With this option on, you don't have to pick, and you can just use all 3 of them. And I forget how it knows, because some of them, like some characters, like I think Ryu has 2 super arts that have the same command input, the same motion. So it has some way to distinguish between them. I forget what that is. That's a really specific thing right there. This is one I liked because it's a weird thing in Street Fighter games. You'll see this in tournaments. You'll see players just standing back from their opponent and just like punching the air, and it looks dopey. It's especially apparent in Third Strike, because Third Strike is so meter and super move dependent, and super moves require meter. And they're doing that because in these games, in these Street Fighter games, you build meter by attacking, but strangely, even if you just punch the air instead of actually hitting your opponent, you still build meter. You still build up your super meter a little bit. So players will just sit back if they really want to build up and get a super charge ready to hit their opponent with. They'll just stand back and just punch the air, and it looks ridiculous and it just looks stupid. But that's a legitimate tournament play to build up your meter, so you can turn that off, which I would enjoy. I wish that was just how the games were made, because it's so stupid looking, but whatever. It's, you know, people would contend that it adds strategy to the game, because you can sit there and charge your meter, quote unquote, by looking like a goofball. So whatever, I don't know. I think it's dumb. But we'll leave it, because it's not like the CPU abuses it. And I only play the CPU, so whatever. So that's the direction menu. Lots of stuff in there. I've got it. Oops. Well, I've got it all set back to the default settings now, I think. Just double check. Everything is gray rather than red. Yeah. So, I mean, I might as well just set it back to normal, and then it'll just be default anyway. And that's all that. Replay would be saving back fight replays that you can save after a fight. Select game goes back to the Street Fighter Anniversary Collection main menus, so then you could switch over to Hyper Street Fighter 2. But So then there's just arcade and versus. Versus, it's not online. This is the PS2, so you'll just be playing local. But since I set options to set player 2 to COM, C-O-M, that means I'll be fighting the computer as player 2. You still do... I have a second controller plugged in, and I think if I didn't have the second controller plugged in, at least in the Dreamcast, I'm not sure the PS2 is smart enough to know this. It probably is. If you don't have a second controller plugged in, Versus is grayed out, and you can't even select it. So even though I have game option, I have player 2 set to CPU, not COM, sorry, I misstated that. So the computer will be playing player 2. You still need a controller plugged into player 2 port to be able to select Versus. And in Versus, once you pick Versus, you still need to use, you yourself need to use the player 2 controller to pick the character that the computer will use. You can't just use your player 1 controller to pick your player 1 character and then pick the computer character. No. Nope, you need the controller plugged into port 2 to do that. It's so silly, and it's just something Capcom kept doing in their games of this era. It's just nutty, but that's how they rolled. So Versus is the game mode that I'm hoping to be enjoying and continuing to play and getting into Third Strike on. So, oh, there is a timer now. The last time I was playing, it's a fast timer too. This is annoying. Because I wanted to jabber here. Well, I'll just have to reset. So the last time I was playing Third Strike on the PS3, my last video, which is a few videos back, or 6 videos back or something, I was saying that I think I'd narrowed down the characters I actually want to play down to about 7, and that should, if I stick to those 7, I'll enjoy the game more and maybe be more interested in coming back to it. And I was thinking about that, and because I didn't want to go back to it. Okay, yeah, so here's the handicap screen, and here's where you pick, after you have to click through the handicap part with both controllers. But once you do that, then the last controller, or is it the first controller that hit the handicap button, gets to pick the stage. So you get to pick any stage, and you can still do random. That's the default setting, but see, most of these stages to me are either, well, let's go through it. So this is the boss stage. Boss stage is okay. I don't have a huge problem with the boss stage. It's kind of trippy. I mean, it's still very static, like just about all the stages are. But at least it's so sort of weird looking that it's kind of interesting, even though it doesn't have animation worth mentioning. This is the subway station. This is Alex's version of the subway station. He and Ken basically share the same stage. They're just color swaps. It kind of looks like different lighting. It's painted on, but it just kind of looks like it was lit differently. So that's another thing that's less compelling about, like, the stages in the first 2 Street Fighter 3 games are a lot more animated, and they'll have like when you go from stage 1 to 2 and 2 to 3, things will change. Like, a bridge will fall out, and it'll fall down to a lower level even on like Elena's Street Fighter 3. What's the first game called? Oh geez, I can't think of it. Anyway, but the stages here are very static, and they even basically clone the stages. So Alex and Ken, essentially, it's the same stage. It's just a palette swap, which is kind of lame. It does have different music, so that helps a little bit. Ryu's stage is you're on top of a castle, which sounds cool, but it's a very boring sort of side view, and the colors are just a kind of green and light blue, I guess, and it's just kind of dull. Yun and Yang, they also share the same stage with slight color differences, and the Hong Kong stage. I like the music in the Hong Kong stage, but both of their versions of the stage have flashing effects. One of them has one of them has rain, which is fine, but then there's lightning in the sky in the background, which is slightly flashy. It's not super bad. And then one or both of them, I can't remember, have one or two different spots where there's like electrical wiring that's exposed and flickering a little with an electrical charge. It's not terrible, but I was feeling super photosensitive at one point, so I was avoiding those stages. Dudley is probably one of the stages I like the most, but it's still very static. It's kind of a weird composition too, because if you're over on the left-hand side of the stage, it's kind of dark and not very interesting looking. There's just a building sort of right up against the background, and it's not a particularly interesting looking building. It's kind of the dark area of the building facade as well. And there is in the middle, there's a horse and carriage, which is kind of cool. The horses even animate a little bit, just a little. So that's something. In the right-hand stage is there's a little farther to look back in the background with some more buildings down the street, but there's nothing really interesting going on there aside from, I guess there's some colorful flags or something coming out the side of the building. And then there's just like a street in the foreground on the right-hand side, and it's like, I think some street cones or, warning cones or something, and those shake a little bit if somebody like is thrown nearby, so that's a little interactivity. But again, it's kind of dull. Russia is another color swap stage that's shared by both Necro and what's his name? 12. One of theirs has snow in it. It's just been edited, and they added a little white pixels on top of some of the parts for snow. I think there's little flakes coming down too. But it's again, so they don't have their own really unique stages. They're kind of the same stage. It's also very dull colors, which is weird because you're up on a rooftop and there's all these, really what I think I've seen in photos are very colorfully painted onion domes and things in the Kremlin, that kind of thing with the really minarets on these round minarets and things, but it's very dull coloring and blah blah. Hugo stage is an interesting one. It's this intense green color. There's a very intense music track that goes with it. He's got all this crazy stuff in his home. I mean, if you look at it closely, he's kind of a psycho. But there's all kinds of stuff that sort of bounces around if people get thrown nearby and stuff. So it's kind of a fun stage. The music kind of gets to me because it's a little it's not rock exactly, but it's a little harsh. And the green is also like, it's so intense that after a while it's kind of like, okay, this is a lot of green, but it's one of the more visually interesting stages anyway, because there's so much detail in the background basically, which a lot of these stages don't really have a lot of detail. The Ibuki stage is one of my least favorite. It's very flat and brown. You're sort of right up against this. You're on this, I guess, a little path or dirt road that's, precisely parallel to the plane of the screen. So that's boring. And then there's a field beyond that, but you don't really get a sense of depth there. There's little animations with like little dragonflies, but they're very tiny and you scarcely notice them while you're playing. And then on the left-hand side, there's trees, but again, it's a very kind of right up against the screen feel to it, very flat, not a real sense of depth. And then when you go under them, like a snake falls down to the ground at your feet and slithers off. It's kind of small snake. You're like, this freaking snake is falling on me. It doesn't hit you. It's just, look, let's drop a snake in the player's face. It's just, who wants that? It's just such a flat and monochrome stage that, it's so not great. Now, if you really want a single color stage though, Elena's stage is the one for you. Super intense, gigantic sun in the background, and the whole stage is just this intense red. The whole stage. And again, it feels very flat, even though you're supposed to be looking out over this huge expanse of African savanna. But it's just such single color, and there's no sense of depth. And the color is just for me, it's just overload of this single red. So I don't like Elena's stage. In arcade mode, of course, in Third Strike, at each stage you can pick between two opponents. So if one of them is Elena, I will pick the other character, generally speaking, because I don't want to be on this intense red of Elena's stage. Brazil, this is Oro's stage, is a really boring stage. You're just on this concrete platform that's like a giant loading dock at a harbor or something. You know, this huge expanse of industrial concrete, and really nothing going on. You can see some seagulls sort of circling off in the distance. Very tiny seagulls. But that's it. It's again a very dull stage, and like the perspective, the horizon is very low, which feels like it should be a cool perspective, but it's not. It just means that you're mostly just looking at this empty sky and not a super interesting sky, aside from these little tiny seagulls that are circling eternally. So yeah, that's not a great one. Yang is again a swap of Yun's stage with slightly different coloring and weather effects. Ken's stage is a color swap of Alex's stage. Sean's stage is it's not a color swap of Oro's stage. They're both Brazil, but it is, and they're both a harbor. They're both the same harbor, I guess, Santos Harbor, but they are at least slightly different scenes from that harbor. But it is, so Sean's is slightly more interesting. There's a I think it's Sean's that has the truck. There's like a fruit truck for, it's, you know, bringing fruit to load on a ship or something on the left-hand side. It's about as exciting as it sounds. I mean, it's just sort of a small truck with fruit painted on the side of it. And then on the right-hand side, there's a big ship. Actually, I may be confusing that with the Oro stage. I don't remember. But I do know it's Sean's stage that on the right-hand side has a big ship. You know, a big cargo super tanker or whatever the heck you would call it. You wouldn't call it a tanker, but a super massive cargo ship on the right-hand side. And I think you can see, if you look way down this, and there's these tiny little people and mechanisms that are sort of repeatedly doing some sort of loading the ship type of animation, very tinily. But again, the colors are pretty dull, and I mean, you're looking at it's an industrial loading dock. It's not particularly attractive or interesting. I mean, it's well executed in terms of, whoever drew it. It's professionally done, competently drawn, all that stuff. But it's kind of boring. Anyway, I know me describing it is also boring. Urien's stage is, I don't like, but that's mostly because of the music. I don't like probably my least favorite track in the game. It is kind of a harsh, not rock again exactly, but it's just a harsh sound to the track. But it is kind of you're in a cave, and it's a dull, rocky color for the most part, with some green moss over it or something. There's a kind of cool tree growing, I think is it on the right side? That if you look carefully, you can see it's like growing all the way up to the top of the cave or something, with very intricate branches. But it's sort of a dull brown, so you don't really notice it while you're fighting. So again, it's kind of a boring stage. It at least feels like a different location, but there isn't a whole lot to look at. You're just looking at, you're in a cave with gray rocks. Akuma stage is probably my favorite. it's a pretty cool scene. It's kind of overall a green color, and I like green, but it's not as bright, intense green as Hugo's stage. It's a sort of a forest scene with there's a little, I guess it's a little graveyard or memorial, something on the left-hand side, sloping up to some trees that are well drawn, well rendered. There's what's on the right-hand side? I don't remember. Sort of a similar feel to the right-hand side, but it's not the same gravestone type of thing. But overall, it's got a nice foresty, outdoors, organic feel to it. And then in the background, there's this huge moon looming up over the horizon, very cinematically, with a bare tree. I think it's a bare tree with an owl sitting on one of the lower branches, sort of silhouetted against the moon. So that's kind of cool. It's a nice scenic stage, and it's got some interesting detail, and it's got a nice mood to it. So like, probably when I'm playing Versus, I'll mostly pick Akuma's stage because so many of the other stages. So Chun-Li's stage actually has a lot of detail. It's like an outdoor restaurant scene. There's a table in the foreground on the left-hand side that does kind of block the characters more than you would probably want. Like there are Street Fighter V stages that block characters that are not allowed in tournaments. I don't think they ever disallowed Chun-Li's stage for Street Fighter 3. There's even a little bird. It's probably the most interesting background animation in the game that I can think of off the top of my head. There's a little bird who will come down and land on that table and peck at the dishes. I'm kind of biased towards little birds, so I think that's cool. But the thing and then there's is it like a support that holds up an awning or something on the right-hand side foreground that you can, or near background that you can break if a character is like thrown into it or something, which is a nice touch. But what I mostly don't like about the stage is just overall it's a very brownish yellow color scheme, and that's just one of my least favorite colors. I think also the music track in that stage gets a little old, and that's probably mostly just because Chun-Li is so overused. If you're watching like tournament footage of Third Strike, Chun-Li is probably the second most used character, so you see a lot of this very yellow-brown Chun-Li stage, and you hear the same track, which is kind of a generic, this is quote-unquote Chinese music track, sort of a traditional quote-unquote Chinese music, I guess, with a little bit of a techno twist, but it's got a very traditional quote-unquote Chinese refrain to it that gets a little old to me. But it's mostly the color. Makoto's stage is one of the better ones. It is kind of muted colors, so you really have to look at it, but if you do, you see some interesting stuff. It's sort of a courtyard or front yard maybe of a traditional Japanese home or something, I guess. There's like a orange tree or some kind of fruit tree in the sort of middle leftish area that the fruit will fall off the tree if people are thrown onto the ground nearby or something like that. There's some tree branches on the far right-hand side that will sort of block characters if you're jumping in the air on the far right. I think that's about all the interactivity, but it's one of the nicer looking ones as far as colors go, even though they're a little muted. And it's sort of a peaceful feeling and well drawn. They're all well drawn. Basically, I don't find the colors objectionable, and I don't find or too boring, so that's a plus. 12 stage, again, is just a copy of, what's his face's stage? Necro stage. Remy's stage does have kind of a lot going on, but it's mostly a flashing effect. It's like you're in some kind of underground metro station or something maybe, and there's some kind of music club or dance club entrance on the right hand side with this weird like giant mouth that you would walk into as a front entryway or something, and it's lit up with these lights that the whole thing sort of pulses or flashes. And the flashing effect, I'm trying to avoid flashing effects, so I try to avoid that stage on the left-hand side. So if I do get stuck on that stage, I'll like retreat to the left-hand side where you can't see that club entrance flashing at you anymore. And there's it's sort of a kind of a narrower corridor. The screen sort of narrows and comes to the foreground. There's a wall, and there's not too far back from where the fighters are fighting, and there's people like leaning against the wall, and they're kind of an interesting detail to look at, so that part's fine. But the right-hand side, the flashing, I really dislike. So, and then you go back to random. So let's do random, and we'll see what comes up, because I'm going to have to go and repick characters.
Prepare to strike now.
So this is Dudley's stage. So like this side, you're kind of this dark building. I do like the phone booth. I don't know why I'm spending so much time critiquing stages. I guess it's just my way of excusing myself for in the future just playing, overdoing Akuma's stage. And here there's the street scene in the distance. There's a double-decker bus, all these sort of stereotypical, oh, that's London landmarks. Here's that warning cone in the foreground that I think will wobble if somebody gets thrown or something. Or maybe it doesn't. Well, that's not as exciting as I thought. But the horses are probably the coolest part here. Hi, horses. Actually, that's probably the most animation. I was wrong. It's not the bird and Chun-Li stages. These horses are probably the biggest animation you see. I'm really bad with Urien. I'm not even paying attention. I'm looking at the background. But the color's kind of dark, and I mean, I guess it sort of conjures up that, circa 1900 air of, sort of dirty London town scene, but, whatever, I don't know. Of course, there's a mini, I guess the mini behind the horse and carriage is a nice touch. That is an actual British mini that you would see over there, not the gigantic things they call minis here in the States. But anyway, those were not the characters I wanted. So, I was thinking there were 7 characters that I like to play, and if I stuck to those 7 characters, I would have more fun with the game and maybe come back to it. But that didn't turn out to be the case. I didn't really want to go back after I'd played about 4 of them in an hour or so session, I think. And I was thinking about it, and probably there's really only, there's 3 characters I kind of like, and those are Hugo, Akuma, and Ryu, or Ryu or something. But really, as far as characters I would want to play as, because I really just like Akuma because he's kind of like Ryu, except with more moves. And I like Hugo because he's kind of silly and crazy. But really, as far as actual play, I think Ryu is really the only one I really want to play. So now I'm in a Ryu mirror match. Well, what the heck. And I only like one of his supers. The other 2, I'm not any good with. So, the question is, can I... What's the fastest way to get to Akuma stage? I'm not looking at... It's Japan, right? I screwed this up. That's Makoto. Where's Akuma? So I guess moving to the left anyway. That's muttering to myself because nobody cares, but hitting the stick to the left gets there faster than hitting the stick to the right. So here's Akuma's stage, big moon. What's on the right-hand side? It's just foliage, I guess, and a big boulder. Let's see how this mirror match goes. Probably not going to go well. I haven't played Third Strike. I haven't played Ryu Third Strike in a while. I'm not good at Third Strike anyway. And I'm just making excuses now. Oh, that's gonna hurt. Nice. I should probably set this back down to difficulty 4. After all, I'm dealing with 2 more frames of lag than I'm used to after the PS3 version. See, I didn't lose if it not for... Oh, see, I would have been able to do an uppercut without those 2 frames of lag. Totally wouldn't have whiffed that uppercut. Well, so, and it's not like I know how to play Ryu, it's just when I play a lot of these... Wow, I went right through the fireball? I don't think it always does, though, does it? Or maybe it's just against, like, Akuma or Ken's fireballs? Like, so many Street Fighter games and characters in Street Fighter games, I feel like the game just isn't really made for them. It's really just made for Ryu. And so playing other characters, you're already at a disadvantage because they're not what the system is meant to give the advantage to. How do you do that donkey kick? Back and kick? Like he just did. Because it's not quarter circle back. Is it half circle back? No. Oh, is it back uppercut? No. No, that was half circle. That was quarter circle back anyway. This game probably has a move list. No, it doesn't. Dang. Alright. Well, the PS3 version has a move list, obviously, and the PS4 version. Oh, I guess it would have been there, but... Oh, yeah. Like, I like playing Hugo, but I hate playing Hugo if he's up against, say, Ryu or some character with fireballs, because he just feels at such a disadvantage. I know he's got moves that are designed to get around or deal with getting past fireballs a little bit, but really, I mean, Ryu doesn't have to spend his time figuring out how to get past some kind of attack that his enemy can just spam at will, right? So why would you play a character who does have to do that? Who has to spend so much of their time and energy trying to compensate for this easy move that so many of their opponents have at their fingertips whenever they want. Oh, I did that too quickly, dang it. Of course, that's a terrible way to use a super anyway, but I'm not good with supers. Most of the time I was playing this game, recently I had supers off in the Dreamcast version. Oh, I'm told. Oh, that killed me. So, I don't know. Can I hang with this game? I don't know. It will probably depend on how I feel about this versus CPU mode with good old Ryu here. Like, the thing that... I mean, obviously, you know, this, you could say, well, this is just kind of an arcade stage, right? Well, for one thing, I don't know if Ryu would ever face Ryu in an arcade stage, and he certainly wouldn't do it in Akuma's background. But the other thing is, the difficulty scaling in some of these Street Fighter games, like Third Strike, is very apparent. So, like, the first 2 or 3 matches will be real easy, and then you'll have a couple matches that are kind of the difficulty setting that you picked, and then after that, the matches will get harder and harder. So it's kind of hard to get a match of a specific difficulty you wanted, because it'll probably be either easier than you wanted or harder than you wanted. Whereas in versus CPU, it's just at the difficulty setting you set in options, and it doesn't change. So it's always going to be the same difficulty setting, and when I'm fighting whoever in versus CPU mode, they won't get easier or harder depending on what order I'm facing them in. That was stupid. no. Ah! So does that just do nothing? No, I lose. That's funny. Oh, that was kind of fun, even though it was a mirror match. One thing that's unfortunate is that you can't do... there's no just rematch button. There's continue, but that does go back to character select. It doesn't just repeat the match you're in. So we have to do that. The other weird thing with this is that, so I've beaten the game with all of the characters. When you beat the game with a character, you get access to, I think it's their second impact colors, and you do that by holding start when you're on the character select screen and then hitting a select button. So like if I hold start and hit one of Ken's buttons, you should end up with his one of his second impact colors, but the colors, I think the color selection is hard bound to specific PlayStation buttons, not to whatever you may have remapped them to in options. So I don't really know what the various buttons for selecting my colors are on this, so that's sort of irritating. Anyways, I always use the super because the others, this is just uppercut or a charge. This is the charge fireball, which can stun, and I see people in tournaments doing cool stuff with that, but I'm not that good. And they have trouble with it. It does keep my stage selection, which is nice. And then his other one is a super uppercut, I think, but I am terrible with landing uppercuts. I always just super whiff. So we got the classic Ken and Ryu. Of course, Ken is one of the 3 most used characters in tournaments and stuff, I think. Up there with Yun and Chun-Li. And it's mostly because it seems to be those characters are rated highly because, well, for Ken and Chun-Li, they have supers that are very easy to combo into. So if you just land a hit, you can just try to land like a light kick on somebody, like kick their toes, and then as soon as you hit, you have plenty of time, even for a chump like me, to trigger this super, which just actually, is that the one or is it? I'm not sure it's that one, but it's some super kick that he does, and you have plenty of time just to trigger into the super that hits just about all hits usually and does a lot of damage. They did a poor job of balancing the super moves in this game, and I guess maybe they were thinking, well, I mean that could just be because it was 3 supers per character, which is a lot. They wanted to give you all these options for playing a character a particular way and make it feel like there's I'm not paying attention and Ken is mopping me up. Feel like there's all this different ways, different options with the character. It's almost a different character because supers are so important in this game. I think it is the other one. But what that ended up meaning in practice is that some of the supers are just way more effective than others. Most of the time, most characters will only have one super that people actually use if they're really trying to win. And also between characters, there's a wide gap in really how overall effective the super tends to be, so you end up with, man, it keeps sailing right over my supers because I'm being a dope. Dope. Sorry, I'm just thinking about supers and jabbering on. This is kind of one reason why I didn't get out a microphone when I was doing gameplay videos for a long time, because I knew there would be a good chance it would make me play worse. And that was definitely me jabbering and playing poorly. I'm going to pause this for a second. And I'm back. So while I was taking a little break there, I thought of two things I want to change. I think if I was paying attention, I don't think I would be doing well there. So difficulty, I don't know why I thought 6 was something I could hang with. So let's set it back to 4 and see how that goes. And then I have this on 5 rounds, or you have to win 3 rounds to win the match already instead of the normal 3. So I think I'll set damage level back to the default setting. So, because I think those fights were dragging on just a little. Hold start and hit some button. I don't know what. That was L1 maybe. Let's see what that gets me. You can start, hit some other button. Now, maybe it's this one. I guess it's probably, well, we'll see. I've been waiting for you. Alright, let's try to do a little better. Pay a little more attention to what I'm doing. Oh, I like that color. Is that start plus L1 for Ryu? I'll never remember these colors too. I was thinking maybe I can uppercut spam him on wake up. Like you can totally do in Alpha 3. But this game is a little smarter than Alpha 3. You know, one thing that I haven't really noticed in the... I don't think the Dreamcast version did this. In the PS3 version of Third Strike, Online Edition as they call it, there's a very apparent stereo effect. Like if you do something while you're on the left hand of the side, and you have, say, stereo headphones on, you'll hear it almost entirely like if I threw a fireball. On the PS3 version, I would hear that almost entirely in my left earphone because I'm on the left-hand side of the screen and hardly hear it at all through the right. And I thought that was something they had invented for the PS3 version, but it actually does a little, I think it does a little of that in this game. So if I come over here, I think it's a little more in the right-hand side speaker now, but it's a much more subtle effect than they made it in 3. In 3, it's really strong and it just sounds weird. It sounds really weird. And in fact, wow, Ken, you just taunted your way out of a round there. So I wonder if 4 is too low, because I'm jabbering away again and not paying attention. And Ken is going to get by scrub stuff. Well, you can always just uppercut your way out, Ken. Because you're Ken. Nobody can stop that. And he's not using supers. At least block that. See, one thing I'm bad at with Ryu in particular is I don't know how to combo into a super very, I mean, obviously, if I could get it, well, I would get like a solid hit, but so, I'm dope. The lesson is that I'm a dope. But level 4 Ken is a bit of a dope as well. So difficulty 4 is too low, because I was not really paying attention and I still beat Ken 3 rounds to nothing. So let's try 5. I mean, maybe 6 was the right setting. I don't know. Maybe that's why I thought of it. Because I've done this before. I can't remember. I think I was on 6 in the Dreamcast version. Let's try a different start. And then, of course, in the regular, if not holding start, if you hit like... Well, see, it's not going to do it though, because in the arcade, it's light punch, medium kick, heavy punch. But because these are wired to specific characters, or specific PlayStation keys hardwired and not remapped when I remap my buttons, it'll do something dopey and different, and that's annoying. I guess we didn't see Mr. Difficulty 4 actually do the super. But I think it's 3. I guess it's 3 because it didn't seem to do 2. It's kind of a cool color for Ken. Not digging the gray for Ryu. These are second impact colors that I unlocked that you get with holding start and pushing an attack button on the character selection here. I really do like that Ken color. In general, the second impact colors for Third Strike, or for Street Fighter 3, are kind of a little prettier than the Third Strike colors. I think for the Third Strike colors, they had already kind of used up some of their best ideas on second impact, and they wanted to do something different, but they didn't quite come up with better combinations. Okay, so this is difficulty 5, Ken. How you feeling, Ken? Are you gonna get hit by stupid stuff? I mean, maybe 6 was right, and I just was not paying attention. I certainly wasn't paying attention at all before. I was paying attention a tiny bit. I was a little lucky. I was gonna uppercut anyway, and he just made himself a huge target by whipping a giant uppercut right in front of my face. I love the owl on the tree back there in front of the moon. That's just, I mean, you know, it's not original or anything like that, but it's just super cool anyway. I wanted to super through his fireball, but he'll just get hit by it anyway because he's his level 5 chump. I wanted to uppercut there, but I'm a spaz, and it worked out, and the uppercut would have missed. See, now, that's one thing that I don't know well. Like, probably should have done a medium uppercut, and that would have knocked him down, or at any rate, not left me open for a counterattack, I think. It's weird. It's a quirk about Street Fighter, how they make medium uppercuts. It definitely works this way in 2 anyway, with Ryu. Medium uppercut is more likely to get a knockdown than a heavy uppercut. So it's kind of a safer move. See, just like this is what the game feels. This is what to me it feels like the game was made for. Was this match? Even though it's funny, they actually didn't want to have Ken or Ryu in Street Fighter 3 originally, but was it early location tests or some kind of poll or something? And people were like, "Where the heck are Ken and Ryu?" And, I mean, as you can see, I still like my Ken and Ryu, and not so much a lot of the other characters. But, now, did he win a round? I don't think he did he? Let's do one more, because I wasn't paying attention to how many rounds people won. I don't think he won. And that being the case, I'll have to turn it back to why do both of us have to hit continue? Like, what? What's the point of hanging out? I guess doesn't want me to surprise my fellow gamer? Another second impact button of some kind. Oh no, that was me trying to hit all 3 of the punch buttons without on Third Strike, wasn't it? I got that gray color. Well, let's do start plus L2. Ken will be some Third Strike color. That was R2. He didn't use his super, did he? I'm still not sure that's the right one. Okay, can win a round. without me doing something really dumb. Oh, I already did this color for it. See, now there's a good Ken color. That was R2, no start button. I like that color. Eventually, if I keep playing this enough, I'll remember some of these colors for characters that I like. Oh! Caught you. But that's a stupid tactic, and a pro player wouldn't be caught dead doing it. Actually, it's funny because in tournaments, there have been famous occasions where, like, Japanese players will get... Probably mostly Japanese players, they're more purists, I think, than American players. Well, okay, so I tried to uppercut counterattack, and he just threw me out of it. So obviously, my timing was way off. I'll blame the 2 additional frames of lag versus the PS3 version. Well, guess what, Ken? You just ate that one. Oh. Taunts. Ooh! Well, I think that is the kick special, the kick super art that is super easy to combo into and the one that people always use. And I mean, the problem is that Third Strike tournaments, I totally read that, but or anticipated it. I didn't see it coming. I just knew he was going to jump in. Third Strike tournaments tend to get really boring because everybody just uses Yun with his Ganajin, super cheap, stupid Yun auto combo thing, or they use Chun with her easily comboed into kick combo super, or they use Ken with his easily comboed into kick super. And I always thought, well, why don't they just ban those 3 supers and then you'd see a lot more character variety, but I mean, A, you probably wouldn't because people would just use whatever the next 2 or 3 strongest. Okay, well, you won a round because I'm talking a lot, probably. But I guess we'll leave it on 5 for now while I jabber away. Why don't they just ban those 3 supers and then we'd see people use other combinations of things, but you know, really people would just go to maybe Makoto and her particular super, where you can jump off the back wall and juggle people to death or stun them and do all kinds of... Okay, now I'm doing really badly. And so forth. So, you know, there would be no end to it, obviously. What of course people have been asking for years and years is that Capcom make a version of the game with just rebalance at least some of the supers just a smidge. But Capcom has not been interested in messing with Third Strike. They just keep putting it out the same way. I mean, you know, of course I say this as somebody who kind of likes Third Strike, without having quite been able to get into it, but... So he won 1 round, so I don't know, we'll leave it on 5. Let's try some other opponent. But you know, these days you would think, well, if they were going to do something like this, they spend all this time in making this game. It is the 3rd version of the game, but they would just leave it open as a platform, right? And then just why stop developing it? Well, because everybody just updates online, so you can keep making new characters and blah blah. And you know, you would have your fan base that would just remain loyal and keep buying your DLC. And oh, I didn't want to pick Ken. Oh, well, I got confused between my 2 controllers, so I'm stupid. Well, I guess we're doing one more Ken match. But of course, these days, Capcom, and probably rightly so, wants to basically stick with one game that is their game of the time right now. That's Street Fighter V, for instance. I mean, they kind of tried doing a Marvel vs. Capcom, but that was probably a dumb idea. I mean, it didn't work out, but that was for other reasons. So they wouldn't want to have like a Street Fighter 5 running alongside a, you know, Street Fighter 2D, whatever they would call it. Even if some people played it, because they would feel that was just taking away critical mass from a more popular game, whichever one it was. Oh wow. Okay, that's good to know. Oh, now you're busting out the stuff. Well, you didn't grab me out of it that time. I guess he probably could have just jabbed me too, and that would have had the same effect, wouldn't it? Can you jab somebody out of the soup, or do you specifically have to hit them with something big, like a throw or a meaty attack or something? I mean, I barely know anything about just trying to uppercut and failing. Like, I'm super bad at throwing in Third Strike, because yeah, you have to hit light punch and like kick, and that's totally unlike any other game. Well, Kim, you're doing better, and I'm just sitting here complaining about how hard Third Strike is. And how Capcom are jerks and don't want to improve the game. Which, I mean, let's get real. Just have to enjoy it for what it is, and that's what I'm trying to do. I mean, the other thing is that I can at least be thankful for is that back in the day, in the PS2 era, the Dreamcast era, they would actually take a console port and add new modes to it, like this versus CPU. Oh god. This versus mode. Oh, I meant to throw, and of course I was thinking alpha throw, hit 2 punches.
Into the heat of battle. Go for it.
Unfortunately, whenever I did hit him anyway. But, and because you see like the latest compilation of old games that they put out on PS4, the 30th Anniversary Collection, they didn't add any, well, they added a training, which is, people like complain, because initially they were only going to add it to the 3 and 4 games in there that were the online enabled ones, and people thought that was pretty cheap, so I think they added it to the rest of it. I don't even know for sure, come to think of it. But, and they're bare bones training modes. There are other, like SNK's later console ports on PS2 had training modes that you could basically set up to be versus CPU matches, and even like you could set it so the character who loses, because you could set it to KO characters in training matches, and you could set it so the character who loses gets replaced randomly with a different character, and that's all pretty cool. But Capcom never did that with their training modes, and now they certainly don't add, they add the barest bones training mode, and that's it. So they don't add, they wouldn't add a versus CPU mode like this, because that would take a little bit of engineering and actually messing with the game code. No, they don't want to do that. They farm it out to some Western company, and we just get the bare minimum running an emulator. So I'm just glad we can still get this old PS2 version, really, and the PS3 version, I guess. Okay, so let me put my controller straight, and let's pick somebody else. Who should we do? Let's do Alex. I like Alex. Oh, there's Gil, who I've unlocked. Alex, we'll do a second impact color. Oh, it would be pretty scary if he hit me with his hyper bomb. Let's do that. Whoops. So Alex has to hit the stage. Second impact colors of one variety on Alex there. You see how the filter works? I think it actually makes the game look cool. I mean, obviously, you know, the only way you can get the true look of the game is to play it on the CRT screen of the type that the game was designed for, with its particular unusual resolution. That probably wasn't an unusual resolution particularly, but for CRT screens at the time, but it's certainly not a resolution you find on high definition TVs these days. Now, Alex is one of those grappler characters who has to struggle to get in against fireball spam. But once he gets in, he's supposed to be able to dominate and do a lot of damage. So my job as Ryu would be not to let him get in. See, he's got that dive that helps him get in, and so forth. He's got that rush there that helps him get in. Oh, he got in. But, like, you'll very rarely see anybody playing Alex in a serious tournament, because he's hard to use, and it's just hard to keep up damage-wise with the Chuns and the Kens and the Ganejin Yuns. You really have to string together all the right moves in a specific sequence. See, like, that slap of his turns me around, and then I'm momentarily stunned, and then you're supposed to do a certain grab or something. Nah, that was a really deep jump kick. I thought I was going to go straight over it. So I have a really hard time playing Alex, because you just have to be so... You just have to... Oh, that was half circle forward kick? Yeah, why was I thinking it was back? It's not back. Was it quarter circle forward? Can you just do quarter circle? Let me do a donkey kick. Alex, no, you're not letting me test my move. No, I think it is half circle. Yeah, you have to do full half circle. Alright, Alex, I'll let you have that. Now we're playing for reals. Call me easier. Oh, neat. Oh. Okay, well, Alex is outplaying me at the moment. Anyway, I can't play Alex for beans. I like playing him, but then again, I don't like playing a character who I know I am so far away from playing correctly. See, now there, I hit him with, in the same burst, was a regular fireball followed immediately by the super. That's not, I didn't mean to do that, but I'm just a spaz cranking the stick, and so here I'm going to get, there's the hyper bomb, I'm dead. Well, well, so I was talking trash about Alex's being able to beat Ryu's, but of course, he beats me because I'm a chump and I'm not playing strategically. But he got a D, and I got an F, right? Okay, so that just means we get to rematch. Now I am burning to beat you, Mr. Alex. I'll give you your hyper bomb since that's what you beat me with. Okay, we can do this. Totally do this. It's a nice mauve color that Alex is sporting there. Oh, I'm already letting him do his nasty business on me. That was a stupid move. You're just going to spam it now because you can see I'm a chump. See, now there's a thing you're supposed to do with Ryu, like low kick and fireball, but of course now I'm doing it at completely the wrong time. That was supposed to be an uppercut, but worked out. How did that hit from so far away? Donkey kick hit him. That's supposed to be a super combo. There we go, cheaped it out. Give me that seed for cheap.
Are you ready?
Ooh. Oh, why did he fall on me? Ooh. I always forget about EX moves. Get off me! Yeah! So there I got an uppercut on him on command, even though, despite the additional 2 frames of lag. So there we go. I am now pro Ryu Street Fighter 3 Third Strike player. Fear me, Alex. Fear me. Fear me, Mr. Mauve. There we go. Now I'm styling on him. On me. It's so weird. Like, I guess people complained about these Dreamcast and PS2 versions, although I think actually something people liked was that they fixed a few of the slight differences, slight non-arcade perfect differences. Like, there were certain combos that didn't land quite right that you could do in the arcade that you couldn't do quite right in the Dreamcast version, and I think they fixed a couple of those. Maybe I'm making that up in the PS2 version. Oh, I thought about doing an uppercut. Oh. I could be just making that up. That was almost cool. Dang it. But anyway, I'm sure there are still, because this is not emulating, just straight up emulating the arcade ROM. It is a programmed. That throw of his I hate because I have a real hard time with the throw range. That command throw. I think it's a command throw. Ooh, that was unfortunate. I did need to do an uppercut, but whatever. I'm bad with my uppercuts today. Well, I'm always bad with my uppercuts. People are trying to pretend it's not normal for me. That got him right. No, he flew. I could fly higher than Hugo. If Alex was doing something weird. No, that was supposed to be the spinny. That thing. I would have fallen over it. I didn't want it. I have to do the medium one. Come on, you're not going to land that leaping command throw from that far away. It's so slow. They gave you a chump move, Alex. I'm sorry. But Alex is fun to play against. I mean, I like playing him too, but I'm terrible at it, and that's not very fun. Being terrible. Not that I'm good with Ryu, but at least I don't feel like I'm completely suboptimal. I mean, I am suboptimal, but I'm not. I don't feel like I just can't actually land most of his special moves. That's what I can say. So let's go against somebody else now that I've defeated Alex for all time. Here on the giant level 5 difficulty. Let's do whatever button this is. Third strike color. For me. Sean got really badly nerfed, so it's not really worth fighting him. Well, Hugo I love. I mean, Hugo is the most entertaining character. I'm not playing him now because I am so bad at playing him. Let's do a second impact. Oh, wait. Do a timeout? What did I do there? Let's see. That's the throw, right? Is that it? That's not a throw. This is the one I usually use when I'm him, but let's give him this one because it's a gigantic throw that's just ridiculous. I'm terrible at landing it, but it is cool when you do land it. It's terrifying. Hugo is the most entertaining character, I think. And he's even got his poison there, the sidekick. And I actually do okay with him, but I'm basically just mashing buttons. So he's another character where I feel like, when I try to mash buttons with Alex, I do terrible. But when I mash buttons with Hugo, I do okay just because his moves are so big and broad that you can score hits even if you're just mashing. But I still know that I'm being totally suboptimal. Like, he has this stuff where you, like, grab the character out of the air and throw him, and bounce him off the wall, and then do a massive pile driver, which is just awesome to see. But I don't know how to do that stuff. And, you know, sure, if I played just Hugo and really concentrated on him, I could probably kind of get it down, but I don't really like having to think that much, I was about to say, and then I bit my tongue, but really that's it. I just want to be able to play intuitively and just hit whatever buttons strike me and feel good at the time, which is basically what I'm doing right now with Ryu. I don't want to have to do a specific sequence of attacks. I don't want the game to tell me what order I have to attack in. I don't like that. But you really have to do that. And I particularly don't want to spend so much of my time having to dodge fireballs. But that's what grapplers like Hugo and Alex have to do. Because they come up against, like, has Capcom ever made a grappler with a fireball? Would that just be too much? I mean, why don't they try that? I'm trying to think. I can't think of one off the top of my head. That's what I want now. I want a grappler with a fireball. That would equalize things for all the abused grapplers in all the history of Street Fighter. Make one with a fireball. Of course, then they would probably make them completely weak in every other respect. Oh! Yeah, nice one. You can see another bad habit of mine is that I just tend to hit the heavy attack buttons most of the time.
You win.
See, now that flashing there, when you KO somebody with a super, it gets all flashy red and yellow background. And that's something that's basically why I turn off supers, or I used to turn off supers. And I should know that it's coming and just, you know, be able to avert my gaze slightly if I really had to, but I just get obsessed with looking straight at the screen, so I didn't do that. But whatever, I'm okay. I haven't got a migraine yet, so, you know, what am I worried about? Oh, how did I do that? Wasn't I on continue? Did I accidentally tab down to exit? Well, crunk. Navigate back to my Ryu. So, see, the problem, that was the difficulty problem, because Hugo is kind of easy to beat. CPU Hugo. Let's do Makoto. Makoto has some really cool supers. I don't remember which ones they are. Let's try the first one, I guess. They aren't necessarily very effective, but they're cool looking. Like, she has one where she basically just hulks out and flashes or turns red and does a lot of damage with her, I think with her punches specifically. But we do have this relative difficulty problem where Ken difficulty 5 can win some rounds off me. Hugo difficulty 5, I guess he won one, didn't he? So maybe it's about the same. Maybe I'm overreacting a little bit. But it certainly felt easier going. But, you know, part of that is because I'm a fireball character, Ryu, and Ken has a fireball of his own to counter my fireball with, so But Hugo does not, and Hugo is just going to struggle against fireball characters. But that's... like, I'm more used to... I come more from playing King of Fighters, the old King of Fighters. And, oh yeah, that's a cool super move too. That's her first super. It's just this massive punch that sends you to the moon and does a huge amount of damage. Players actually do use that one in tournaments. They don't use her one where she kind of hulks out and does extra punch damage for a while. But I like that one just because it looks cool. And it's kind of fun to use. It makes you feel cool. If you land it, of course, if you use it and you expended your super meter and then you don't manage to land a punch before the timer runs out, then you feel like you just wasted it. And of course, you can whip a super anyway, so I guess. Oh, she hit me out of my EX. Well, now I'm just being dumb. Makoto is an interesting character design. She has all these moves that do a lot of stun. She's kind of built to be a stun monster. Oh! Like that did a lot of stun. I have difficulty with her, I mean, because I'm bad at playing the game, but I don't particularly find the way her moves are laid out to be very intuitive. I mean, you know, it's just... one thing people complain about with Third Strike, I guess, is that it's very technical or whatever, but I think a lot of people don't necessarily mean the same thing when they say that. But one thing that you could say is technical is that the moves for these characters, like Makoto and Alex, especially Alex, but I feel this way a little when I try playing Makoto too, is that the commands you have to enter to do various moves kind of feel arbitrary, the way you have to move the stick or whatever. And you're wondering, well, why does that do that? It doesn't feel like, you know, whereas somehow throwing a fireball while pushing a quarter circle forward just feels like, yeah, that's me launching a fireball, yeah! I don't know. So she has that grab, that command grab that lifts you up and sets you down. It doesn't look like it does much, but oh man, is that going to kill me? It does a lot of damage. It doesn't look like it does much, but it actually leaves you stuck there for a second. And if she she could have done her super there, she would have hit me because I couldn't have done anything about it. Dang. Alright, Makoto. See, I mean, that dash punch is really a cool move. I have difficulty with it because it's partly made the lighter punch versions of it. You can do multiple of them in a row when your opponent is hit stunned in certain ways. You can get in multiple of them. Like you can do that command grab of hers and then do like two light dash punches before they could even possibly block. But I'm not good at doing like two quick special moves like that, so that irks me. Like I'll wrench my wrist trying to do that. So probably 6 was the correct setting, because I'm winning these without having to struggle or think about it too hard for the most part. But I don't mind winning, right? Who else? I don't really like fighting Elena because she just kicks me so much. Let's do Chun-Li. Chun-Li kicks a lot too, I guess, but you know, whatever. Now, which of hers is the one that everybody uses? Well, I don't remember. Her punch one is this goofy, kind of a big plasma sphere around her hands that she extends forward, but it's still pretty, it doesn't shoot anywhere, so it's short range, and it doesn't seem to do much damage even if they're in your range. And I like this color. I think this was, I forget if I picked a second impact color or a third strike color. So that super seems kind of lame. Her other one, that flip kick she just did, where she kind of came down like an axe kick, her other kick super is that, except a fast, basically a fast version, and it charges up really fast, and she can have like 3 of those ready to go at once or something. Oh, I should have supered her and I would have killed her while she's yawning at me. Well, that was her taunt. Chun's taunt, like, powers up various attributes of hers. I think it's kind of random which one she does. I totally forget what Ryu's taunt does. That's... Get away! Oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm whiffing uppercuts for one thing. Oh, I totally didn't even mean to. That's going poorly. What was I talking about before I started getting worried? I'm still worried. No! I'm so bad with that EX kick of his. I'm also bad about walking into that, thinking I can punch my way into that kick spam of hers. And you really can't, or at least unless you know specifically what you're doing. I parried! That was totally accidental. Oh, there's something I was talking about before all this jabbering on about. Oh, I was wondering what Ryu's taunt was. I was going to say you do the taunt by hitting heavy punch and heavy kick together, and I'm getting mauled. God, Chun. Do I even want to burn supers at this point, or just save them up for the next round? Oh, close. Traded! So if I could get a second... No, Chun isn't going to give me a second. So there's Ryu's taunt. I forget what that does. It probably powers up something temporarily. I should really look... If I'm going to just play Ryu repeatedly, I should probably at least know what his taunt does. I don't see tournament players use it very often, so I don't think it's hugely advantageous. And that's another thing that they didn't... Well, I think... Well, actually, yeah, they didn't really balance taunts great, probably. Not that Ryu really needs help. He's one of the stronger characters, but he's not... He's definitely not quite Chun or Ken level. Just because his... Like, he's not Ken level. Probably just because he can't combo into as damaging a super. People do sometimes try playing his stun fireball, because if you can do it right, then you stun the guy, and then you can get in a huge combo on the stun, and that together with the original stun hit adds up to decent damage, I guess. But it does seem a little difficult to use, whereas Ken will just do his kick combo into his kick super and do a ton of damage with just one super cancel. So I kind of beat Chun up easily. Let's see how Dudley does. Let's do a second impact color of some variety. Rocket uppercut. Corkscrew bow is the one that most people use. I don't remember what this is. Probably not great, because pretty much everybody just uses corkscrew blow. And I would have to say that, for me, that's definitely the one that works best. I don't remember... I don't remember what the other two are. No, I like those gloves he's got there. That's a second impact color for Dudley. Did I pick? I think I picked a third strike color for Urien. No, I immediately forgot. So probably next time I'll have to pick difficulty 6. But I mean, maybe that was something that turned me off, was just having to struggle so hard to get wins. Like maybe I should leave it on 5 because I can jabber away and just hit buttons and have fun. I mean, that was a little too easy. One touch I like about third strike, and one thing, oh, he hit me with the rose, or I jumped right into the rose. One thing worth mentioning is like the PS3 version, although it's based on this version, they went, and of course it's in 720p, higher resolution, so you don't have this problem with all the jaggies and stuff. It's still not the original pixel perfect resolution, but that's because you can't replicate those old CRT non-standard, non-square pixels perfectly, unless you had just ridiculously high resolution, I suppose. But oh, what? I didn't mean to do a donkey kick. Well, right back at you, Dudley. But when they redid they also redid in the PS3 version that I've been playing up to this point after the Dreamcast version. They re-rendered the in-fight UI, so like the character portraits. In the below the health bar up there are high resolution character portraits, and the health bars themselves are really high resolution, and they re-rendered the names below the health bars and all that stuff. But it doesn't look right, you know? Like why do you want 2 different resolutions of pixels? The fighters, because it's not like they redrew the fighters in high resolution. That would have been a disaster anyway. Probably. Oh, I thought I caught him in a move. No, he caught me in a move. He's doing really good. That's why corkscrew blow is good, actually. There, third time's a charm. Oh! Don't whiff it. No, no! So I'm whiffing fireballs and just let them mold save as a result. Yeah, it doesn't look good to have 2 different resolutions on screen, 2 different graphic resolutions on screen in a 2D game, generally speaking. So they really shouldn't have done that. I guess they wanted the game to look fancy and modern, but oh boy. Man, he's getting beat there. I mean, I was totally not paying attention last round before last. Last round I was kind of paying attention. He's doing a good job of landing his supers. I'm doing a bad job of finding fireballs. I'm having an easier time when I'm on this side of him. Nice. See, that's one of his anti-fireball tools. Oh. So I'll just do something that isn't a fireball. Now, I do that. I don't even know what you call it. Basic spinning kick of his that he's had since the first Street Fighter game, and I should totally know it. I tend to do that move if fireballs stop working, and it's stupid because that move tends to be really unsafe. And if he had blocked it, he could have totally nailed me. So it's dumb. It's really only, well, it's useful against certain fireballs that it can go over. It can't go over all fireballs, and that I always forget which ones it can go over. let's see, I'm gonna do a second impact Ryu color of some persuasion.
Well, I got the picture. Yeah, I'm waiting.
And let's see, I did manage to beat him. I don't like fighting that girl. Do I like fighting Q? I don't know. See the third strike color for Q. Q's got some fun, like, I would never be able to use that effectively. Maybe the CPU can use it. Q's got some kind of fun supers, I think I recall. Generally, I think there's definitely one of his that's almost always used in tournaments. But Q himself is not used. There was one famous, was it Kuroda? The Japanese player who was really pretty good with him. But still, I don't think Kuroda would beat the top. Was known for being the top. John or Ken or young players at major tournaments specifically. Maybe he was, I don't know. That was Kuroda's one of the older third strike characters, and that was players, and that was way before my time. And then there was a bit of a scandal with Kuroda, and no, I don't want to go into it. You can look it up online. Some kind of sex thing. I don't know. I think, yeah, pictures of underage girls or something. I don't want to slander people. I don't know. I don't know anything. He's probably fine. Probably perfectly fine too. But he did stop playing, I think. Or at least playing in tournaments. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look that up, and if I got that wrong, I'm gonna have to cut out that part of the show. In fact, I'm just gonna pause this right now. Yeah, well, it looks like it was actually way worse than what I remembered, so anyway, enough said about that that unfortunate incident with the former Q player. But anyway, the point is, Q is hard to use. He's basically a tank. Whoa, okay, so his third super. So he's charged up and does more damage, I think, with his punches. Kind of like that Makoto super I was talking about. So Q is the character who I was saying sometime back. His taunt powers up his defense. So if he can taunt up to 3 times, raising his defense and almost doubling. Effectively reducing by almost half, or maybe it's like a third, which doesn't sound like much, the amount of damage your attacks do to him, but it makes a huge difference. I mean, just imagine basically his health meter being like, 35% longer or something. And that's what it would be in effect. So that's really strong, but otherwise he's very weak. Like, he's not weak isn't the right term maybe, but it's just difficult to do. It's difficult to string together highly damaging attacks with him. His attacks tend to be single strikes, and it's hard to... What am I doing? It's hard to get a big combo with him unless you score certain of his combos, or certain of his supers. Oh, that's what that does. That's right. If he does it, that's right. There's a follow-up motion you do once you're in that flashing state. There's a command grab motion you do when you're near the opponent, and then he grabs him and explodes. So it's kind of a kamikaze attack, which isn't really the best look, but it's kind of a cool super. Yeah, I'm getting into some weird territory talking about Q. He's a weird character. I mean, he's kind of a cool character. Let's do another second impact color for Ryu. Hopefully not the same one. Oh, that's Q. So I just did a second impact. Getting my... So that was total destruction. No! Dang it. Not deadly double combination. And for Here, I'll just do a third strike color. See what deadly double combination does to me.
Are you ready?
I've seen a lot of people say they just think Q is a stupid looking character. I don't know. I don't have a problem with him being a guy wearing a... Well, that's the thing. Like, you don't know. Is he a person? Is he a robot? He's just a guy wearing a mask. Probably more probable. I mean, it seems like they just took a picture of a weird looking dude in the background of Ken's Street Fighter 2 stage. There's a guy standing on a boat. And they made that into a character. In third strike. And of course there's the character G, DLC character in Street Fighter 5, who is somehow possibly related to Q, and that's... Ooh, I think that is the super that people tend to use as Q, because if you hit me, it would have, I think, bounced me off the wall. Is that what it does? And then he could have done another combo to me, and it does a lot of damage. I guess that's why it would be called deadly double combination. That makes sense, right? Anyway, G in Street Fighter 5 is... You know, they hint that maybe G himself was Q before, and now he's G, and is that his name again? And he kind of shares some similar build and moves, but he's less clumsy than Q. I don't know, I stopped playing Street Fighter 5 before G came out. Well, CPU, you're not using that deadly double combination, whatever it is, very effectively. But anyway, other than his super, his Q, you saw him charge towards me with sort of leaving a trail of images behind and punch me. Those are charge attacks where he holds back and then pushes forward and punch button or something. And that's kind of all he's got. See, that's the charge back and forward with a kick button, where he does a low punch. And I kind of liked him for that reason, because he's a simple character, so I can kind of feel like I know his moveset. But he's also just really hard to do enough damage to keep up. And then you're always worrying about getting his 3 taunts in early in the round so that you're maximizing your defense and you can take a lot of hits, because you need to be able to take a lot of hits because he doesn't do that much damage. Oh, he X'd one at me. Well, I'm just gonna have to rip off a cheap super at you. See, he was doing it. Oh, he is taunting. Oh man, so now he's gonna be really hard to hurt. Okay, you can stop, dude. You only get 3. After that, they stop doing anything. So funny, the CPU isn't programmed to use that super very effectively, it seems, and isn't programmed to know to stop taunting. Well, he got his taunts in there, so, and then he whooped me. But anyway, it is kind of crippling to have to get taunts in. Oh, he got me that time. Yeah, then you can combo that, but he did a terrible job of... Maybe he's intentionally missing it because he's only difficulty 5, basically. Like if I set it to difficulty 8, would he get a huge combo off that and just murder me? Probably. I mean, I don't know. Well, I let him get his... see, you can't... Like, if you're really playing against a good Q, you couldn't sit back and just let him do taunts, because now he's a tank. I should have done a super, because he's really frozen for a long time if he misses that. Oh, see, and I would be dead there because you can combo off that, although I tried that and I just couldn't figure out the timing for that at all. Oh, he got me. Well, Q is whooping me. For all that he was missing that super earlier. Oh, I thought I had that. That's what I was trying to do. Oops. Oh well, it worked out. Oh, accidental donkey kick. Okay.
You win.
Whew. Thank you. So anybody else I really want to play now? See, I'm having so much fun. It's slightly too easy. So that might be part of the key to appealing to me. I don't run up to, like, I'm not in an arcade mode, so I don't run up against a difficulty wall at some point.
Yeah, I've been waiting for this.
I like Urien. I might like playing. See, I don't play Remy. I don't play against Remy because he's on that darn flashing stage, that underground club stage with the flashing entrance. So, of course, the one everybody uses. Does the CPU know how to use Aegis Reflector effectively?
Yeah, I've been waiting for this.
That is the burning question.
Well, I got the picture.
Aegis? No, I can't even say. I mean, remember how to say Aegis right. I guess it's Aegis. Aegis Reflector. That sounds right. Urien also has cool colors. It's funny, he has one, I don't remember if it's a third strike color or a second impact color. I think it's one of those anyway, and not one of the weird PS3 DLC exclusive colors. See, now if I was smart, I would have just parried that. No, I tried to parry. Do another one. Oh, I parried one of them. That was an EX one, so it gets 2 hits. I parried it. I'm awesome. See, I always think too late of doing an uppercut, and I'm like, okay, I'll uppercut his next time. I did both! I parried both! I'm super bad! Teach you to throw your meteors at me, Mr. Crazy color Urien guy. You got thong. Yeah, I didn't parry that one. Urien's fun, but I'm terrible at playing Urien. Part of it is that it's really like half of his moves are charge moves. And I mean, I have enough time. No. Oh, why did that not reflect because it was an EX? Or was it the weird range there or something? Like that's an up-down charge move. I'm terrible with those. But his fireball is not a charge move. If I can remember correctly. Anyway, that really confuses me. Also, he's kind of slow, and that gives me trouble because I'm slow. So if I'm playing a character who's also slow, then he's got a lot of range with his big, long legs, but I just have a lot of trouble playing him. You do see him played fairly often in tournaments because players who are super good can do all kinds of crazy stuff with his Aegis Reflector. Just getting like an opponent stuck between two of these mirrors that he puts out, these Aegis Reflector doing things, and they'll just be bounced back and forth off of those things while he's punching them or whatever. It's crazy. Of course, you probably know this much better than I do, dear viewer, so why am I scorching your ears with this inadequate explanation of how Street Fighter works? I don't know what to do. See, when in doubt, do not do that kick, stupid me. Oh, how do I... Can I counter that? I mean, he parried his way out of it. Shoot, I'm in trouble. Please hit. No, no. Whoa. Cheap. Yeah. Winning with the cheap hit. So that's cheap because he was blocking, but he was so low on health that the tick damage that it did to his guard was still enough to kill him. That's why you get a little C for cheap, because even though he was guarding, even though he successfully guarded, it still killed him because he was so low on health, and I'm just a mean, horrible person to take advantage of that. So let's see what playing Remy is like, because I hardly ever do. This is a second impact color for me. Let's do a second impact color for Remy. I don't know. I guess that's a kick uppercut, probably. Blue Nocturne. But yeah, I am kind of dominating the CPU on difficulty 5, so obviously 6 was a more correct. Ah, I got the pink second impact Ryu color. Remy's got kind of a fruity, grapey color hair going on there. Got that Omega symbol on his shirt. Some people complain that Remy is too much of a King of Fighters type looking character. Of course, he's far more cartoony than King of Fighters characters are drawn. That part doesn't bother. I mean, they've got a point that Street Fighter characters are usually a little grittier looking, a little more like guys who would be out there doing some kind of crazy fighting, whereas Remy just kind of looks like a club wallflower or something, a pretty boy, blah blah. You know, like a Benny Maru or a K Prime from Street Fighter, but or Street Fighter, King of Fighters. But I guess I like King of Fighters, so that at any rate doesn't bother me. The problem, like, what does that do? That's Blue Nocturne. Is that like a counter thing? So if I had hit him when he had his leg raised and glowing, that would have done some big thing on me. That seems, see, that's just a difficult thing to play, right? Like it relies on a certain circumstance. Yeah, it is a counter. So he set it up right. I was gonna try to hit it anyway, but I was in mid-swing when he did it, so that worked, so props to him. So maybe it's not that bad, I don't know. Oh, he got me, that long extended heel of his. I thought I had him. He's got good range on his kicks. Makes me feel like I have stumpy little legs. Ooh. Oh no! Should really be saving us for when he doesn't fireball at me, because then I'll go through his fireball. But mostly, I'm not super fond of him. If there's a reason why I'm not super fond of him, it's because he's a Guile clone. Guile from Street Fighter 2. He basically has the same charge moves, like, you know, back, forward, punch to do his fireball discs, just like Guile. He's got that flip kick, which is a down-up charge move, just like Guile. So it's like, why? He's just like the French Guile or something? I mean, I don't know. What's the... I mean, not that I have an objection to Guile. I'm not good at Guile because he's a charged character, but that's not Guile's fault. But Remy is not thought of, as far as I've seen, as one of the stronger characters. Particularly, I have seen players use him, and you know, obviously there's going to be people who are really good with him, but they do struggle in certain matchups, at least. Like, I guess he struggled against me there. It's just easier to throw fireballs, for instance, with a quarter circle forward punch than having to hold charge back and then move forward and then hit punch. So it's just at a disadvantage in that regard. Well, should we do Ryu versus Guki, or Akuma as they call him in the States? Sure, we should.
Yeah, I've been waiting for this. Well, I got the picture.
So we do third strike colors for both of them.
Yeah, I've been waiting for this.
Now I have no idea which is which on these. One of them's a big fireball,
Well, I got the picture.
which is the one everybody uses. Or there are two big fireballs, I forget. Of course, one thing with... I picked one of the lamer. This is a third strike color for both of them. Like, it's just a navy blue for Akuma there. It's just kind of boring. Like, Akuma's really mobile and stuff, which is cool, but like his moves, he's got, you know, just... He almost got a huge combo against me. Did enough damage anyway. Jeez, well, who's getting stomped? Me. Like, basically, he has too many moves for me to handle when I try to play him, and when he plays against me, obviously.
Are you ready? Go.
I also, like, I don't know if I should use, like, I'm basically frozen into indecision with him, or I just spam everything. Akuma is a fairly strong character, tournament-wise, not one of the very top. Akuma's main weakness, of course, is that he doesn't have much health. That's not hurting him here because I'm not even able to hit him.
Prepare to strike. Now.
I knew you were gonna jump. But if you do hit him, you can't take too many hits. Ooh. That thing's over. Oh boy. Dang it. Oh, he's hitting me with everything. Oh. I got schooled. Oh boy. Well, this may be my... what do you call it? The place where I lose. Let's go with second impact colors. That'll help me.
Yeah, I've been waiting. Well, I got the picture. Yeah, I've been waiting for this.
So... was that just his big fireball? That's how much attention I was paying. Let's see what this one is.
Well, I got the picture.
Maybe they changed that.
Prepare to strike. Now.
Oh man, so fast. Maybe you'll convert me to Akumanism, Akuma. But I also just like Ryu because he's, you know, good old solid dependable Ryu. He's not a bad guy like Akuma. He's not doing cheap air fireballs or whatever the heck that dive kick is. He's just got his simple attacks. And he uses them like a warrior, because he's a good guy. Of course, I don't use him like a warrior. I'm using him like a fool. Well, that was supposed to be a super, and it would have got him, I think. But yeah, Akuma's a little too... Okay, that's his uppercut. Which, fortunately, is pretty hard to land all the hits on. Like, basically what happened there with him is usually what happens with me. If I manage to connect with it at all, it'll just do one of the hits and then fly away. It doesn't really do that much damage that way. Why? Why would I do that? Oh, okay. Well, so he uppercut me out of... Is it the kick? I guess it was. That kick is not helping me. Oh, he's... Air to airs, he's just ruling me. I guess I would have to use jumping right kick. Yeah, at least hit him. Not that time. God! So that's how you land the super uppercut. As Akuma will demonstrate on my face. Wow! Well... Oh man. Okay. I'm giving it high grades. Man, this is rough. Oof. Alamo, that's it. That's what I've met.
Well, I got the picture. Yeah, I've been waiting for this.
Met Mr. Akuma Alamo. So the uppercut that he just rocked me with is 2.
Yeah, I've been waiting for this.
So I may just not have to not try to fight Akuma because
Prepare to strike.
I have a much worse time fighting him than anybody else. Or if I was going to fight him, I would have to fight him on a specific Akuma difficulty level. Oh, I should have just thrown him. Why didn't I do that? You can throw crouching guys, can't you? I don't remember. I think you can. Yeah, I mean, I think just with a regular throw input, you'll get a crouching person. What am I doing? I'm out of ideas. I'm just spamming fireballs. I'm just spamming super later. Give me that C. Yeah.
Fighters ready. Engage.
No. That was not a good sequence of events. I like this Ryu color. There's a second impact, right? It's pretty, it's probably second impact. Owie. See, that kick and then fireball combination is one of the basic Shoto moves that I should remember, but I never do. I only remember it consciously, which is no good. You have to have it in muscle memory. Yeah! Kind of missed the first window there, where I definitely would have had him, but fortunately, did not block. Oh man! Oh, he didn't block. Well, I made that a little closer than I thought it was going to be.
Into the heat of battle. Go for it.
I knew you were going to do something in the air. Of course, that was that thing that hit both medium attacks to do a little hopping attack that will hit a crouching character. I guess he thought I was going to turtle. Oh, jeez! Nice parry into super. What a jerk. Oh, he is getting me with the turtle, anti-turtle attack. Get me with everything. Oh my goodness. Oh, okay, come on, I can do this.
Prepare to strike. Now.
Yeah, as I just back into the corner right off the bat, that's smart. Dang it. He knows exactly what to do now. Whew, that is a good basic deadly Akuma combo. This is really going badly now. Parries, and then I had a weak follow-up. Well, I almost brought it back. That round, I mean. He's bringing the whole fight back. Dang, your parries! Oh, I was gonna do an uppercut. Okay, this is parrying all my sweeps. Wow. Wowie, wow, wow. So, did he win 3 rounds in a row? Oh, man. Come on. Oh, Akuma. So, it's the spinning uppercut thing. That's the fireball. That's the... Oh wait, well, I guess they're both uppercuts. That's the fireball. Oh man. What am I landing in?
Prepare to strike. Now.
Whoa. Oh. Jeez. But that's kind of how the first couple rounds went last time, where he wasn't really unleashing on me. I guess, was it just he built up meter eventually? There's obviously some way to counterattack those teleports that I don't know. Ah. Not the jumping version of his fireball, like super. No. I did the not great move. Should have done that. Jumpy, I should be able to get more uppercuts in. I'm doing really poorly with uppercuts. Just even getting them out, I mean. There was too slow. Oh, yeah. Damn, here are these sweet berries. Oh, why? Why do that kick?
Are you ready? Go!
I'm gonna punch your fireball. Oh! See, I don't know what to do when he gets me in the corner like this. I just... Oh, I should... I should obviously not just mash all the buttons at once. Okay. I guess I'm staying on Fireball of his because that's the least painful looking one. Like, at least it does its business quickly. So I'm thinking I should do more uppercuts, but it really wails on me when I do a stupid uppercut. Like now, yeah. I just don't know what to do when he's got me in the corner. I guess I can helicopter out like that. At least. Counterattacks it. Hitting him. It's getting worse and worse. Getting too hesitant is the problem. I was gonna say, like, at least if I'm jumping in, all he can do is hit me once with an uppercut, but, well, A, that's not true. Not so much, he doesn't have an uppercut super, so it's a little less dangerous, I guess, but... Oh, I'll just get hit with everything. Oh my goodness, he hit me with the Raging Demon. Wow. Big ups to you, Raging Demon. Oh my goodness. So Raging Demon is an extra super Akuma has, maybe to make up for not having any EX moves, where I think he has to have full super charge and full super charge and full something, or maybe I guess just a full super charge. Like all his maxed out super meter, basically. Jeez. Okay, I can't helicopter out because I'm a dummy. Okay, he's just gonna get tight. Oh, engage. Oh my god. Oh. Now throw is not working. There's one. He's really giving me way too much benefit of the doubt here. If he was smart, he would just come in and jump back and forth over my head like he's about to do. Well, he didn't for some reason. Because basically my only chance is if he stands off in a fireball war and I get some fireball. Oh. So what I ideally would learn is how not to let him get in and tear me up. How at least to get out of it. Throw at least is a little safer than trying to mash out with attacks. At least it seemed to be. Oh, nuts. Well, he's just gonna hop all over me and wear me down. I don't know what to do when he's doing that. Like, probably if I knew the timing, I could uppercut. There's all kinds of stuff you can do, really. Oh, jeez. That was a... I knew he was going to block, so I was basically just going for tick damage, I guess, but that's not... I hit a button. Well, I made him take some time. Fudge.
Prepare to strike now.
he's doing it again, hopping over me. I guess I can do that too, but I don't really know how to do it correctly. Like your medicine, jerk face. Okay, well, if my arms will hold up, maybe I'll just keep doing that. Yeah! So, okay, I'll just tatsus, that's what they're called for short, those kicks. I'll just do light tatsus. And light or medium down kicks. Oh no, he got me. Raging frickin' demon, look at the damage. That was like 60% damage at least. Well, Raging Demon will take the round, probably. Ah! Oh, 3 rounds to nothing with light tatsus, baby. Yay! I learned something. I think. I turned his own light tatsu game against him. Well, I feel good about that after getting... I mean, he beat me at least 6 times. Right? I don't think I quit out, so maybe it was just 6, but it sure felt like a lot. And it was a lot. Because I only beat him once, and I don't want to fight him again right now. So... that was fun. Probably against most characters I could have been on difficulty 6 and had more competitive fights and still done okay. But we'll see if I can stick with this, if I'll feel compelled to come back to this more than I did with just going through arcade mode in online edition on PS3, because PS3 doesn't have a versus CPU mode like this. So, yeah, you know, sticking with Ryu. I don't seem to get bored with Ryu or frustrated, like he was kicking my butt, but I didn't feel like it was the character's fault, you know. I think that's just one of the strengths of Ryu, is that he's got what feels like a solid bunch of moves that you should be able to win with, and you just have to figure out what to do. And that probably goes for most characters, I don't know, but I don't always feel that way with other characters. Well, I'm babbling on. Anyway, that's Street Fighter 3 Third Strike on PS2 in the Street Fighter Anniversary Collection. Thank you for watching.